Hey, welcome to the Path Less Travel podcast. I'm your host, Craig Heatherly. Here's an uncomfortable truth about leadership. The higher you climb, the fewer people are willing to tell you the truth. Not because you stopped having blind spots, but because nobody wants to be the one to point them out to the boss. So the things you can't just see quietly grow. And that's what this conversation is about. The blind spots nobody mentions, and how great leaders go looking for the very feedback that's hardest to hear. If you're new here, quick context. This is our Leadership Roundtable series. It's a little different than the normal episode. Instead of a one-on-one interview, I get a few sharp leaders in the same room and we just talk. No slides, no script, no prepared answers, because the best leadership conversations don't happen on a stage. They happen in a room where people feel safe enough to tell the truth. Before we dive in, I want to give you a quick snapshot of two of our sponsors, because both of them make this series possible. First, Rippling. Most companies are managing their people across a dozen disconnected tools, and AI can't help you when your data is fragmented. Rippling brings HR, IT, and finance into one platform, giving AI a single, clean source of truth for your entire workforce. That means automations that actually work, insights that span your whole business, and busy work that disappears. And second, the Ascent Collective. I love reading this one. The Ascent Collective isn't your granddaddy's executive forum group. Most leadership groups focus on growing your company. The Ascent Collective focuses on strengthening the man carrying the weight of it through fitness, faith, and brotherhood, because no leader was meant to climb alone. Connect with Brian Wiesweaver to learn more. All right, well, today I'm joined by three leaders who are willing to get honest about their own blind spots, not in theory, but out loud. We get into why feedback dries up at the top, how to build the kind of trust where people will actually tell you the hard thing, and the difference between feedback that's worth acting on and noise that you can let go of. Here's the thing to listen for. Your blind spots are blind for a reason. You can't find them on your own. You need people close enough and brave enough to tell you the truth. Now let's get into it. I'd like to kick it over to our panel for introductions. And Scott, if you don't mind kicking us off, a little bit about you, your organization, and then maybe why you said yes to this topic.
All right. Thanks a lot, Craig. Thanks for having me. Yeah, my name is Scott Clark. I am relatively new to the area and new to the company I work for. I work for a company called Tire Rack, which is a 47-year-old company that's been based in Indiana and most of the time in South Bend since its inception. If you don't know, we are in the tire business. We have two parts of our business, B2C business, TireRack.com. We sell tires directly to consumers online, and a B2B business where we sell tires to independent dealers through wholesale distribution and to car dealerships. And our point of difference has always been, since the founding of the company, is to really strive to give people objective information about tires. That's why for decades we've done our own tire testing, because we know it's often a distressed purchase. It's high cost and people have difficulty comparing one tire versus another. So Tire Rack has always been about empowering the consumer with objective information so they can make an informed decision. So, and for those of you who are in the area, which most of you probably are, it's the best kept secret. We have our own retail store here at our headquarters. So if you need tires, we'll take care of you right here in South Bend. Regarding myself, as I said, I've been here just a little over a year. I spent my career with the Michelin Tire Company. I spent about 29 years in various roles around the world, about 11 and a half years overseas, the rest of it in the U.S. And originally from St. Louis, Missouri. So I'm a native Midwesterner at heart. So this area feels very comfortable, natural to me, a little bit colder than what I was used to in St. Louis. And so the last comment I would make when I came here, everyone said, "Hey, don't worry. We haven't had a bad winter here in like a decade. We don't have those anymore." And of course, we had 92 inches of snow this winter here in South Bend. So, but I survived. My wife and I survived, and we're happy to be here. And again, Craig, thanks for inviting me to participate in this call. In terms of why I chose this one, first of all, I'm not sure I really knew what I was choosing when I raised my hand for this, but I have a lot of blind spots, so this was a very relevant topic for me. So that's why I chose it.
That's good. Hayley, you want to jump in next?
Absolutely. My name is Hayley Boling, and I am the CEO of Boling Vision Center, Insight Surgery Center, In Focus Optical Labs, and the executive director of the Kindness to Prevent Blindness. And it sounds like a lot of entities, but it's all interrelated and interconnected in so many ways. We have been in the Michiana community serving Michiana since 1960. So we're going on our 66th anniversary. My grandfather actually started Boling Vision Center. My dad joined Boling Vision Center in 1986. And my sister is also an ophthalmologist. We have 11 providers, about 120 team members across 4 locations. And so this truly is the definition of a homegrown Michiana business that has been serving this community and being really entrusted with the precious gift of sight for Michiana families for a really, really long time. I absolutely love what I do. I love who I get to do it with. We honestly love who we do it for. And when you have that trifecta, impact follows. And so we have been making a big impact in this community, whether we are protecting, preserving, and enhancing the precious gift of sight, or if we're out in the community, boots on the ground, making sure that people feel seen and heard and loved and valued in so many ways. And so you'll see our team out at community events. You might see us with a big towable unit that says Kindness to Prevent Blindness, doing mobile screenings for kids and people in underserved communities. Or you're going to maybe see us in one of our offices. And it's really a pleasure to be able to be a part of this community. Me personally, I've been the CEO for Boling Vision Center for over 17 years at this point. I was green when I took my role. I was only 23 years old. And the way that I got to where I am today is by surrounding myself with brilliant people. When you are green, you have an unlimited supply of blind spots. And I had so many blind spots early in my career that I intentionally sought out people that were way smarter than me. I wanted to find rooms that were way bigger than me. And I wanted to find opportunities to basically learn vicariously through others in. And so it was a really wonderful opportunity to learn from industry giants. I really stood on the shoulders of industry giants and people that had been there before me. And so I'm so grateful for those people that came there before me and really made this path possible. And so it's been an incredible journey. Through those 17 years, I've actually put Elkhart on the map and Northern Indiana on the map in the ophthalmology world. I have actually just served as the American Society of Ophthalmic Administrators president. And so after 10 years of serving on that national board, was able to serve as president. Also serve on an international board called the Ophthalmic World Leaders, which really is about advancing diversity in leadership positions throughout ophthalmology across the entire world. And so making sure that there are opportunities for diverse perspectives and diverse voices in medicine. We want to make sure that we represent the communities that we serve in essence. And so that journey has been incredible, and I wouldn't be able to do it without an incredible team here at home. And so I'm just really, really grateful to be here. And again, why did I say yes to this one? Because when you start a journey like this at 23, you're going to have a lot of blind spots. And I know that my intention to show up in one way and the experience of how others actually experience me might be 2 separate things. And so finding opportunities to figure out what my intention is versus the experience of others, and then closing that gap anytime that it's possible to do so, that's the true test of a leader. And so I'm happy to be here, and I just wanted to say thank you for the opportunity.
That's good, Hayley. You already shared some good nuggets. You're getting into the good stuff. I'm Kory Lantz. I started Transformation Ministries here in South Bend with my wife 17 years ago. And I just started out of our home in the neighborhood that I'm in right now in our current facility. And we just wanted to invest deeply into children, youth, and their families. So that's what we do. We do it very holistically. We do it very deeply, very intentionally. And we serve under-resourced and underserved children, youth, and their parents. We've done a couple of capital campaigns, a $5 million one to get in our current facility. We're in the middle of an $8 million one to build an early learning center. So we'll essentially be able to work with infants, 6-week-olds, all the way till young adults, and then families involved. So our goal is really to take a family that's in a state of survival or chaos and help them thrive. And we believe thriving is accessible to everyone. It doesn't matter sort of what racial makeup you are, what your background's been, even what job or career you pursue. Thriving is available to all of us. And so we want to eliminate those barriers for our families to be able to access a thriving life. So I started a for-profit little LLC, lawn care company to hire some of the kids in our neighborhood. Ended up making that into a separate nonprofit called Greater Impact. And so those transformation and greater impact work together. We hire kids to kind of teach them the soft skills of employment. So they'll be ready to work at Tire Rack and eventually maybe work at Boling. So blessed to be a part of it. Blessed to know Craig. Thankful to be on this. I said yes because I like to learn and grow, and Craig always has wonderful people around him. So I figured whoever he brought on this, I would learn and grow from Hayley and the Scott. And I know that's going to be true this next 45 minutes. I also like to help others learn and grow too. And so hopefully I can provide some helpful things for those that are listening that might be helpful for them in their journey of leadership and trying to live a life of thriving.
Love it.
Well, this is truly the trifecta, Hayley, of a group. So yeah, thanks for mentioning that. And Scott, you're spot on. I didn't realize that you guys had a retail location there. That is the best kept secret.
Thank you.
Unfortunately, it is. Yeah.
My first question to open this up is, let's take leading a company off the table for the moment. Let's just talk about you as an individual. You've all mentioned the word blind spots. That's obviously the topic. What are some ways in which you've identified your personal blind spots? Yeah, how'd you arrive at that?
I'm happy to jump in. And so again, because I took my role at a young age, I intentionally grew up asking for feedback. I'm a big believer that feedback is a gift. I am Ritz-Carlton trained and Disney trained. And one of the things about those two organizations that they're always seeking out feedback, and they're big believers that good feedback you get to celebrate with your team, and hard feedback you get to learn from it. And so feedback truly is a gift. And so I grew up with that mindset that seeking out feedback is really important. The reality, though, is that feedback doesn't happen. True, honest, evolving feedback doesn't happen unless there is a relationship built on trust. And so making sure that you have those relationships that are built on trust and built on sincerity and built on the type of relationship that is strong enough to withstand hard conversations. Because as you get higher in your leadership journey, or as you get, evolve in your journey, you oftentimes have less people that are willing to give that information, not because they don't have feedback to give, but they don't necessarily have a relationship that is built on the trust that there won't be ramifications as a result of that feedback. And so asking for feedback is a very important thing, but most importantly, having that strong foundation of trust so that the other person that's either giving or receiving that feedback, providing insight into those blind spots, knows that that relationship is built on a strong enough ecosystem of trust that feedback can be well received and safely given.
That's good.
Yeah, maybe just to build on Hayley's comment, I think certainly the foundation, I agree with her, is trust. I think also as a leader, but also in your personal life, you have to demonstrate humility, empathy.
Yes.
You really have to, and that does create the trust, but you have to really demonstrate, you have to have a posture that genuinely invites feedback and input, and then responds correctly to it. And so I think that's foundational. And sometimes that takes time, certainly within a team. And as I think to Hayley's point, you can seek that out individually, person by person on a team. You can do that in your personal life with a spouse or a friend. One of the benefits in having worked in a large corporation over the years, there's also some tools that can be very helpful. 360-degree reviews, we used to do those systematically. Coaches where you could take some of that input, the feedback you've gotten, and get input and advice from coaches and so forth. So there's a lot of things you can do, both, I would say, naturally, individually to solicit the feedback, but then there are also things, if you're in a situation or environment, for whatever reason, maybe that doesn't come as naturally, there are other ways to get it. And I think to Hayley's point, feedback is a gift, but you have to want it. Then you have to respond properly to it. Otherwise, you won't get it on a regular basis.
That's good, Scott. That's good. I feel like there's two different categories that I kind of place feedback in. One is character, one is competency. I feel like it's easy to receive skill-based feedback, especially like in the workplace. Character-based feedback is harder to receive as a leader, especially as you continue to elevate and your organization grows. So, but I think character-based feedback bleeds into work so much. And so how do I find it? I found it from people that love me the most,
Yep.
that know me the best, that have nothing to gain from me, that I have no power over them.
Yep.
And so when I really want to know, like, what are the gateway characters that will lead towards sort of self-destruction or these blind spots, because blind spots are truly blind, you can't see them. So what are these sort of character traits that could lead you into something that could be damaging for you personally, for your family, for your organization? So I found these people being my wife, my spouse. She will tell me how it is. She will call me out my pride quickly. When on the outside, a lot of people would say, hey, Kory's a very humble guy. But my wife would say, no, there's some pride there that I can identify. And so it's like, that definitely bleeds into work, whether I like to say it does or not. I have a group of foxhole friends. And this is a term from my basketball coach. He said, who's in your foxhole? Who's to your right? Who's to your left? Who's behind you? And they're the people that have your back, but they're also the people that will tell you the truth, and they'll tell you about yourself, and because they love you so much. And so I have 3 friends that I regularly ask them, what are you seeing in me that's a blind spot? What are some areas I can grow? And that's very, very intentional for me. The last several years I've been on a journey for this, because I feel like it's been harder and harder to get feedback. And I would agree with you, Hayley. Feedback is the way to grow. It's like gold, but for some reason it's harder to get. And so I've been like, I got to be intentional about seeking this out, specifically the stuff around character, those little character flaws that you have. And so I found those with the Foxhole group and with my wife. And then I also have a group of college people that we meet with for the last 16 years. We've met every other Friday night. 5 couples. And now we have 18 kids amongst us all. And like those people are not impressed with me. Like they're just like, you're Kory. I've known you since you were 20. And I don't care what you do or on or anything. They're just like, I'm not impressed, but they love me like crazy. And they will call me out on some of these character flaws pretty quickly. So
I love that, what you're saying, Kory, because you're exactly right. The people that love you the most and the people that know you the best are the ones that are going to have the most insight into those blind spots. Because the reality you mentioned, as we grow in organizations and as we grow in positions, so you have that positional power, the higher you go there, the more people they're worried about disappointing you. They're worried about, so that friction point of worrying to disappoint you can actually make them pause at giving that honest and truthful feedback. And so you're exactly right. As far as task-based or job-based feedback, that's a whole lot easier to give. And most people are not going to have any shortage of that part of it. But the challenge for all of us as human beings, as well as leaders, is creating conditions, creating opportunities, creating real moments where people actually believe that you want the truth. And so by intentionally asking for it, you're exactly right. I mean, sometimes at the end of a meeting, rather than me saying, are there any questions? I end a meeting with like, what am I not seeing here? And that actually directly feeds into a blind spot. And when you're having a conversation, like, what am I potentially missing? Help fill in my gaps. And asking those types of questions, whether it's personally, professionally, spiritually, it really does gives other people the opportunity, and it creates that environment. It creates conditions where people believe that you actually want the truth.
That's right.
Good stuff.
People don't want to give. It doesn't seem that people want to give that feedback. Like there's too much to lose. It's maybe too uncomfortable for them. Even if you ask them face to face, give me feedback. How can I grow? And so I think it comes back to what Scott said earlier around humility, empathy, I would say authenticity. Like those are so important to showing, I really want this feedback. And then obviously when they have the courage to share feedback with you, it's like, then it's our responsibility as leaders to receive it very well and to receive it with humility, not be defensive, seek more, lean in, and just almost show them like, thank you so much. This is gold for me. And they might look at you sideways like, I'm telling you something about yourself that should be hard to hear. But if we can respond like, no, this is so helpful. And the more we do that, we create a culture around of like, they want this. They are authentically wanting real feedback about themselves. So
yeah, and I think one of I mentioned, and again, it's a little more formal, and I think the best way, as you guys have mentioned, is to solicit feedback. You can do it in a lot of ways. What am I missing? As Hayley said, what are the things I should start, stop, continue doing? But the 360-degree reviews I've done over my career were all anonymous reviews and quantitative. And so there, you don't have to worry about anybody holding back. And those become, if you're soliciting yourself, and then you're also periodically get truly anonymous feedback from oftentimes those are obviously not just people who work for you, but peers. They can be people. You get a real comprehensive view. And I think sometimes it's not something you do every day, but I think periodically that's a great way to get truly unvarnished, straight feedback. So.
Absolutely.
And Scott, you're right, because you're getting so much feedback from different pockets of people,
Correct.
right? It's not just your direct reports. It
Correct.
could be those outside the organization as well, right? It's truly 360. Yeah.
And the great thing is it's 360, but you can see it. Here's what my direct reports say. Here's what my peers say. Here's what my superiors say. So you can see the differences and how you're perceived differently among different stakeholders.
And I love a good 360-degree feedback. I'm actually a Denison certified practitioner. And that's one of the leadership skills is actually learning how to conduct a 360-degree feedback as well as receive it. And Scott, what you said earlier, and Kory, you just mentioned, the humility of receiving is a really important part of that 360 degrees, because oftentimes if you feel an emotional reaction to something that's coming in, it's probably something that you need to hear. And so remembering that when you are soliciting that feedback, it is such an important part of the process, and it's important part of the growth behind it. And the other word that you used, Scott, was empathy. And I think that we oftentimes forget that empathy is a key part of being a successful leader, because even when somebody comes to you with feedback that stings, or maybe it's wrapped in emotion or wrapped in anger or wrapped in hurt, whatever it may be wrapped in, the hardest part about it being a leader is to receive that when our brain is telling us, protect yourself. And so your instinct is to want to protect yourself and defend yourself. But being a leader and receiving and actually taking a step back and using that empathy muscle that we all have, and using that to try to put yourself in those shoes and say, well, where is that hurt coming from? Or where is that anger coming from? And yes, it may cloud some of the feedback there, but there's usually a little nugget of truth in there, at least for us to take a step back and say, where is this actually coming from as far as the experience or the environment that I've created to actually understand? So seek to understand that feedback a little bit more. And so I loved those two words. So thanks, Scott, for sharing those.
That it's a gift,
It is.
and that there's growth that occurs from that. And you guys have talked about different tools, the questions to ask. What am I missing here? What am I not seeing? Help me to look at this through a different lens. Obviously, you three, the trifecta here, you see the value in identifying blind spots. How do you push this down? How do you get others to be comfortable being vulnerable and weave that across the organization?
Love it.
Well, first, I think I'm sorry, Hayley, go ahead.
No, you go, Scott. You started off, and I'll come up at the end.
No, I was going to say, obviously, you have to make sure the leadership team is modeling it, and that's always the best way to demonstrate to the organization the fact that the desire for it is real and genuine, and importantly, when the organization sees leaders or senior leaders responding positively to feedback, it's much like we're talking about individual feedback. We do, and I'm sure many other organizations do, voice of the employee surveys, and we get feedback from our employees, and the positive first, even when you do those anonymously and you say 1,000 times they're anonymous, always anonymous, there's always a discomfort. People, they're slow to get started because people aren't really sure they're really anonymous. But once people see the organization responding to those, to the issues that are coming out, addressing them, you create this positive flywheel effect in an employee survey like that. And the same thing when a leader asks for feedback, they take it seriously, they react properly, and then they do something about it. Wow, then the effect through the organization is huge. So to me, that's the best way to really drive it through the organization, is by example and how leaders respond to it.
You're exactly right. Modeling it is so important, and it really is the speed of the leader, speed of the game concept there. Another thing that I think is so important for leaders to be able to do in order to help model the behaviors that we ultimately want is to publicly admit when we have been wrong and to say, I'm sorry, and to actually demonstrate what a true, sincere apology looks like. I think that throughout our lives, and throughout our kind of culture as a country, apologies can sometimes be perceived by some as a sign of weakness. And I'm a big believer that a true apology is actually the sign of ultimate strength, because it absolutely gives the people permission to see what humility truly looks like and what a sincere apology can do for a relationship. And it puts that pride aside, and it puts that ego aside that we worry about. As a leader, we always have to be right, or as in a position of power, we always have to be right. That really actually shows a sign of weakness if we cannot allow ourselves the opportunity to say, hey, I was wrong, I'm sorry. Or I have new information, it's time to pivot. So this direction that we were originally headed in, it's time to go ahead and pivot to a new direction, because I now have new information that's come to light. Thank you for trusting me. But showing the team that it's okay to be wrong and to apologize when you've hurt feelings, or to let somebody know that we now have new information, we now must do better. When you know better, you do better. By modeling that, it also gives permission to people to know that perfection is not an attainable human quality. And when perfection is not an attainable human quality, it allows people the grace and the ability to save face as they fail forward in life, and hopefully learn from those moments so that they can ultimately be the very best version of themselves possible. And so part of modeling in our organization is being willing, being able, and knowing that I trust you and respect you a whole lot more if you're willing to say, hey, I'm sorry, I made a mistake, or I have new information, I need to change directions. And I think it's a really beautiful human experience to be able to walk that journey with somebody that is willing to admit that they want to move in a new direction.
That's good. You guys are nailing it with modeling it. I think that's probably the most important thing, is modeling as a leader how to give and receive feedback. But we've been really, this past year, we defined it. A year ago this time, we created a feedback model for transformation and said, we're going to go all in on this feedback stuff, and it's just going to be woven into everything that we do. And so we create a very definitive model of like, this is how we give feedback. Here's the 3 A's. It's appreciate, it's action, or it's aiming to assist. And this is how you receive it. This is how your facial expressions should be, your body language. Here's the follow-up questions. And then we actually we role play it with like real stuff.
Love
so
that.
I pull up a senior leader and say, give me some real feedback right now. I don't know what he's going to say. I don't know how it, and in front of the entire staff, calling me out on some significant areas of growth. And so, and then how do I get to respond when I'm feeling, and I remember doing this, I felt that defensiveness, like, gee, I couldn't believe he went to that one. I thought he was going to talk about how I'm just late to meeting some, but he went there. And so then I'm feeling the emotions, and I get to model in front of the whole team how to do it. And then it's in our rhythms of meetings, our check-ins. Anytime we do an event, it's part of our rundown sheet at the bottom. It says pros and grows. So what went well, what can we do better? We always want to have a culture of being better, make everything can be better here. And so we celebrate when we do well, which we do oftentimes, but it's still, there's something we can do to be better. So it's part of the feedback of just events, of staff check-ins. We often ask questions. Our leaders will ask questions around what's ways the organization can improve, what's missing right now in our organization, what's confusing, what's frustrating. If you're in my role, what would you change? And then sometimes we might take it a step further and say, hey, with our leadership team, what's missing from your perspective? What's frustrating? What's confusing? If you were in my shoes, what would you change about our leadership team? And often when I hear about our organization and our leadership team, I'm also hearing about myself. Yeah. I'm the leader. So they don't know that I'm fooling them into this, but I'm getting a lot of the information I need by them saying, yeah, the organization really is, it's just unorganized. We don't communicate well. Well, that's on me. That's saying that I'm creating an unorganized, non-communicative culture here. So I can steal some nuggets there. Now with people that really trust me, I'll say the same thing. How can I, what's missing in my leadership? What's confusing in me? How can I grow? What's frustrating about me? It's very rare I get real honest feedback there, but I can ask about the leadership team and they'll say, yeah, I'm frustrated because y'all are not telling us stuff enough soon enough. And so I'm like, enough said. That's feedback for me as well. So
Kory, I love you talking about culture. It's actually my favorite topic to talk about. And when I'm out doing different things, whether it's for my organization or it's working with other organizations across the country, culture is one of the most important topics that we can create, because you're exactly right. Everything that we create, everything that we model, the frameworks that we put in place, it reinforces a culture that we have created and cultivated within our organizations. And so a culture of feedback, a culture of accountability, a culture of kindness, and those don't have to live separately. All of those can actually live in the same culture. And that's one of the most beautiful things when you create a culture of psychological safety that oftentimes allows people to be authentic and true and honest while still having this opportunity to give and receive feedback in a way that's going to allow them to thrive as well. And so I love the word culture. I love that you're focusing on it. It is so important and oftentimes underrated, because people kind of think of culture as the fluffy stuff, the nice to haves. But at the end of the day, it truly is the foundation of a truly healthy, thriving, when you use the word thriving culture is when you focus and you're intentional and focused on culture. And so thank you for using that word. Good stuff.
I feel like we're waist deep right now, and I'm gonna get you guys in the deep end here in a second.
Let's do it.
Blind spots means, right, we've got blinders. Real quickly for each of you, what was a moment or some feedback that you received that took you to a whole nother level of your leadership journey because now you were exposed to it? What was it? Who said it? How'd they say it? How do you ask for the feedback? How did it happen? And yeah, be a little vulnerable here.
I can jump in first. Mine came through a series of things. One was a staff member that I was having a really hard time with, and ultimately we had to let go of the organization. But this person had some feedback. At the same time, we're kind of doing some a 360 survey, and so I got some similar feedback there, and it was around this idea that it kind of shook me a little bit because I didn't think I was like this, that I was kind of unkind and abrasive and how I shared feedback with people, or how I led at times. And I always thought, man, I'm kind. I care about being kind to people, loving to people. That's kind of how I was brought up. That's how I feel like my heart is. It is, but that was not how people were perceiving me. The intentionality was pure. My intention was right, but their experience or the impact of my words was not. And I started diving into it, and I realized that I kind of had this, I used this phrase, I developed this phrase of just having this timeout talk. So I played basketball. In basketball, you have a 30-second or a 60-second timeout. And when you're in there for 30 or 60 seconds, you don't have time for any fluff. You don't have time to give 3 words of affirmation before you tell someone that they need to do something better. So, but I was kind of using this timeout talk in my work here at Transformation. Like in basketball, you say, you need to block out. You can't turn the ball over anymore. No more threes. You need to, hey, change your attitude. Like, that's just quick phrases. This is what you're doing. And it's like, okay, got it. Boom, I'm out on the court again. Well, I realized that I needed to kind of sandwich things differently here, and not everyone received that the way that I thought they should. So that's been something I've worked a lot, and it was a blind side for me. I did not know I did not know people perceive me in that way. And so I often, when I'm giving people constructive feedback, I try to write the word care on the top of their forehead to remind myself, like, I really care about this person. I really care about this person. It sounds kind of cheesy or whatever, but it's something I've done the last decade, and I still do it. I'm like, I really care about Hayley. I'm going to share something with her. And so how can I do this in a way that doesn't feel like this quick 30-second kind of talk, and then I'm out the door to the next thing?
Good.
I think in my case, I had an experience when first time I moved to live and work in another culture. I moved to Europe in France, and had responsibility over a large team of Europeans. And prior to that point, felt like, hey, the feedback I've gotten in my leadership, people like working for me. Think I'm genuine. Work. I'm just gonna, got that model. I'm going to just apply that as I always applied it. And, I realized the European culture, the French culture in particular, the American approach, while there were some strengths to it, created some tension and some issues. And so that was kind of my first wake up call to a little bit of more of emotional and situational intelligence. And that you can't just go forward with one approach to leadership. You have to tailor your leadership in that case to a culture. But I then realized, came back to the US, I'll go back to my old model and obviously through other feedback mechanisms realized, wait a second, you can't apply your model to all the people that work for you because they come from a very different place. They have their own sensitivities and so while you can have a general framework of who you are and how you lead, it has to be tailored and customized, whether it's based on the culture or each individual person. And that's an ongoing journey for me because it's easy to fall into, wait a second, I think I'm pretty good at this. This is the way I do it. And look I'm the boss. So this is the way I do it. If you don't like it, sorry. I find myself from time to time falling back into that. And how do I need to tailor my style to either the situation or the people that are working for me? And that for me is an ongoing everyday battle that I'm not sure I'll ever claim victory over, but at least it's something I'm aware of.
Yeah.
That's awesome, Scott.
I would say for me, it actually came from a group of peers. And we were doing a board retreat for one of my boards that I am on. And we had kind of dove into the deep end of the insights discovery model when you kind of analyze the energy that you bring to the world. And the insights discovery model specifically uses colors to kind of associate with different energies. And the workshop that we were doing at the time asked people that based on the energy that you kind of lead with, and again, this is kind of like a natural, like this is what you kind of lead in with the world, basically, but that doesn't mean that you're static in that. And so the ultimate goal, of course, is to be a situational leader, to be a situational communicator. And so depending on what the person in front of you or the situation in front of you needs, that you adjust your approach or you adjust the energy that you bring to the situation, right? But, the way that insights discovery actually works is that it tells you like, this is who you are kind of at your core or at baseline. This is your kind of natural energy that you lead with. And so I was in this meeting, this board retreat with several other individuals from all over the country. And we did our insights discovery model. And then the way that this particular breakout room or whatever worked is that you were supposed to go to a different corner of the room, depending on which color you technically lead with. And I was by myself. Out of everybody in the room, I was the one and only, what they call sunshine yellow, which oftentimes is perceived as not serious, or it's perceived as somebody that doesn't necessarily approach situations with the gravity that it needs. And where I look at it as, hey, I'm a silver lining seeker and I can find a sliver of hope in every single situation, no matter how hard or dark or grim. And as a leader, that was pretty devastating because it turned into again, these were leaders from all over the country. And unfortunately, it turned into this situation where that was almost like we're going to make fun of the sunshine yellow. And so I remember sitting there and feeling this and then asking. So I had a mentor at the time and he's an incredible man. And I just said, hey, I need you to tell me, is this how the world perceives me? Because at the end of the day, leading with hope and leading with positivity and leading with the silver lining seeker mentality is part of who I am and what I love about me. But I also know that there are going to be certain rooms that I need to tone it down in. And when I was talking to my mentor, and he said, first and foremost, Hayley, what you need to know is that sunshine in you is a light that will make people gravitate towards you. So he prefaced it with letting me know that there is positive to that natural energy that I bring to the world. However, there are going to be some individuals that don't like sunshine. And so you have to be able and willing to adjust your energy depending on the person and situation in front of you. And in this particular instance, it was a specific person that I needed to tone my energy down. And so now when I approach this type of individual that doesn't love a positive or sunshiny demeanor, not everybody likes sunshine. Some people prefer the rain and fog. I get it.
I love
And
sunshine, for the record.
well, thank you. But at the end of the day, I now really analyze the situation in front of me before I act in a way that might be natural to me. And so I'm like, this person needs me to slow my speech. They need me to actually lower my tone of voice. They might need me to slower the cadence of the way that I'm speaking. And so when I'm giving hard feedback, or if I'm thanking somebody for hard feedback, or if I'm in a room where difficult conversations are happening, rather than going into my natural sunshine yellow personality, I try to take a step back, slow, lower, and honestly just change the way that that energy might be perceived by the person in front of me, not because I'm trying to code switch or do anything that might make somebody feel as though that I'm being inauthentic. But what I'm trying to do is to match what that other person needs from me in that moment. And so that feedback that day, it was hard, but it gave me the opportunity to dig deeper and to dive deeper with somebody that I genuinely trusted, so that I could figure out, like, is there an opportunity for growth here? Not to continue down this pathway because I think it's good. I wanted to make sure that I say, okay, I want to hold on to the good, but I also want to tailor it to the situation at hand.
I'm gonna jump in here for those that are attending. Start submitting some questions, please. If not, I've got a bank of about 75 I can keep asking, but I'll give you an opportunity right now. And as they come in, I'll just ask one of the trifecta individuals to answer the question just to get through a few more. So, John Vermeesh, as your organization and leadership have grown, what leadership strength has become or could become a liability if left unchecked? John, as always, great question. Who wants to take this one?
I'll answer because I think it's tied to something I said a moment ago. I think you have to be careful that you don't become too confident in your leadership skill, particularly if you, as you've described, John, if you're someone that's growing, your career that is growing, and hey, must be doing things right. The way I'm doing things must be the right way. You can fall into the trap, I think, of being overly confident and then become overly rigid and not generally seek some of the feedback that we've been talking about, or being open, even if you are seeking the feedback, being open to change, because you can fall into this trap of, hey, look at what I've done has gotten me to where I'm at. It's worked well. And that feedback, that person must be, it's their problem. They're off base. And I think that's the biggest watch out for particularly anybody who's progressed and feel like they've got it and they're in a groove.
In addition to the confidence, I would also say feeling overly competent. So confidence and competence, and not that we don't want to be ridiculously competent at what we do, but if we ever stop being willing to learn and grow and continue to evolve, I think that being too competent to the point that we're unwilling to learn, that rigidity that you were talking about, Scott, I think could also be a liability. And so I think the smartest people that I know are continuing to learn and grow, and they are curious people. And so curious means you're going to continue to learn. But if we get so stuck thinking that we're the best at what we do and that there's nothing else for us to learn, I think that becomes a huge liability. And so being willing to continue to learn and not feeling so competent at what you do that you forget that there's a whole world. As you learn more, you learn that there's a whole lot more to learn. And so remembering that the world is vast and continuing to learn is another thing.
Craig, I know you got a bank of questions, but real quickly, just to reiterate, Hayley, you were saying earlier, like, one of your strengths, you kind of have you found out there was
Yes.
we call it a shadow side, or a side that other people
Yes.
perceive it differently. And so I think that's important to note as a leader. It's not necessarily one strength is a liability. It's any of our strengths could be a liability if we're not aware of the shadow side of it. So one of my mentors says you're in a dangerous place when your charisma outruns your character. And people have said since I've been a young boy, like, you're very charismatic, you're inspirational, people want to follow you. You have woo for strength finders, winning others over, and some of those things. But I just always remembered, like, man, I don't want that to outrun my character. And so that's the liability when your strength becomes something that clouds your ability to see the shadow side of it.
Yeah,
Let me jump in because I think this question might further this this discussion from Samantha. When you are filling out a self-assessment portion of your performance review, what approach and some factors do you consider are most important to include?
So I think the biggest question is when you are filling out a self-assessment, so understanding the context of that self-assessment is very important. And so there are going to be times where they say, I want you to fill this out from your professional perspective or your personal perspective, because there are, especially in the leadership world, there are different energies that you kind of bring to those worlds depending on who you are and what you're being tasked to do and in the role that you're being asked to play. And so anytime that I'm filling out an assessment, I always want to know what is the context of this assessment so I can be as authentic as possible. And I don't try to find the outcome that I'm looking for, I guess is the most important thing. And so once you understand the context of the assessment, be raw and real, because that's when you're going to get the most out of it. If you're trying to answer in a way that's going to give you the outcome that you think is desirable, at the end of the day, you're leading in an inauthentic way simply because you're looking for a specific outcome and you're not truly getting the information back. So understand the context is number one, so that you can answer accordingly. And then number two, being as honest and authentic as possible so that you can ultimately get the most out of it.
I love that. I love it. I love it. Yeah. I mean, how many people try and game the assessment? Yeah. So that's great feedback there. As we start to close this thing down, I want to give you guys your advice to somebody that's leading a team, leading an organization, to help them with opening up their vision on blind spots, whether it be a podcast, a book, questions to ask your team. I guess give somebody one nugget to take away from this. And this could also be something you've already discussed in this session. But yeah, go ahead. Each person go around here and I'll close this out.
I'll jump in. I think to go back to where we started today, and that is, first of all, as a leader, work very, very hard in building strong trust within your team, and do that by investing time with the team, focused on the team, get to know one another, build that foundation of trust, and then as the leader, demonstrate your commitment to that by individually and collectively with the team, really asking for feedback. Again, we've talked about different techniques. It can be start, stop, continue. What am I missing? Whatever it is, start investing in the team, demonstrate, and set the tone by seeking the feedback yourself, and just keep doing that, and good things will happen both within the team and then down in the organization.
I would say that remember that when you are on a journey to find your blind spots, and again, this is a continuous journey. Like you're never going to be done finding blind spots because they're always going to exist. It's kind of like the game of whack-a-mole, right? Once you discover one, there's gonna be another one that you find later on. And so when you are on this journey and you are asking for feedback or asking those questions, and so Scott just spoke about, again, several wonderful frameworks that exist out there. One of the easiest things that you can do is ask questions at the end of the meeting. You can start that today. What am I missing? How can I help? And so rather than asking kind of a closed-ended question, ask an open-ended question. But I think my biggest takeaway for anybody listening today is to remember that feedback is rarely clean. Sometimes it's going to be right on and spot on and something that you're like, oh my gosh, I needed to hear this in this exact moment. And sometimes it's going to be off base because it's wrapped in somebody else's perception, and their perception is their reality. Sometimes it's going to be wrapped in hurt or frustration or fear or confusion. Sometimes it's going to be wrapped in disappointment. And so our job as leaders is not necessarily to internalize every piece of feedback that comes our way. Our job as leaders is to stay curious and to try to find the truth within that moment, that piece of feedback. Because there are going to be times where it's so off base because it's wrapped in that person's perception that you just have to figure out, where is that hurt coming from? And so your job as the leader is to be able to discern what is perfect for now and what is the nugget within that delivery that I need to go ahead and work to resolve or cultivate or strengthen. And so just remember that the growth definitely resides in the journey. It is not going to be an ultimate destination. And so enjoy the journey. Remember that there are going to be times where it is messy. But at the end of the day, stay curious and open and willing long enough to try to find the truth and the nuggets in everything that comes your way.
That's good. I would just say I'm really encouraged even being on this call because Scott and Hayley, you guys run organizations much larger than mine, and it's very uncommon for people to have the courage to even jump on a podcast talking about feedback and blind spots. Most leaders that I've found, especially as they grow, they don't really make space for it. And at the end of the day, they're actually maybe too insecure to really receive it. Like they might want base level feedback, but they don't really want the feedback. There's just the insecurities are too high. And so I'm encouraged by you both and the way you're leading your organizations. That's really encouraging for me to see that. The advice I would give to a young leader or any leader is no matter where you're at, no matter what size in your organization, feedback is gold, and it's the number one way to grow in my mind. And so don't just value it, crave it.
Yes.
Like just crave it, just want it. And so if you have that mindset of like, this is not just a value, it's like something I crave, then it will come out. You'll find your foxhole people. You'll find the questions that Scott's mentioning. You'll do the 360s. You'll read the books. But if you crave it, it will come to you, and could be a defining factor of how successful you are, not just in the sense of corporate business, revenues, size of company, but like successful in impacting lives. And that's ultimately what we're about here on this call is like, we want to make an impact that's bigger than just having a multi-million-dollar, multi-billion-dollar company. We want to impact people's lives, the employees that we work with, the customers that we serve. And so don't just value it, crave it.
And that's the conversation. If you take one thing with you, your blind spots are blind for a reason. You can't find them alone. So go and ask for the feedback you've been avoiding. Thank you again to our sponsors, Rippling and the Ascent Collective. And if this one helped, share it with a leader who needs it. I'm Craig Heatherly. See you next time on The Path Less Traveled.